Welcome to the podcast that buffs your Hearthstone game. This is Velen's Chosen.
Not all who wander are lost.
Greetings, visionaries. Welcome to Velen's Chosen, a podcast geared to buff your Hearthstone game. We exist to help players stay competitive on the ladder without necessarily breaking the bank all the time. We like to talk mostly gameplay, deck construction, and then we sometimes weave in some arena skills to help you be better and accomplish your individual Hearthstone goals. Today, I'm sick, Andrew's gone, and Eve is the sane one holding down the fort for us this week. Eve, what's going on?
Sane one. I don't know about that. I just got off of a graveyard shift, and after this, I'm going to be going to bed. So I think maybe I'm the sane one. Yeah, Andrew's he's moving.
He is moving, so he is not sure about internet situation, and he's doing all the moving today. So hopefully we'll get some word from Andrew by next week as to what the living situation is and how his wife's doing with the incoming package of delivery.
That kind of reminds me of when we moved into this place. My husband was talking to the internet guy, and he's like, my wife really needs that internet hooked up as soon as possible. If I remember correctly, Cataclysm was just about to hit, and he was like, if she's not online the second that thing goes live, I will never hear the last of it. Please make this possible for me. Get this internet up and running.
All right. So this week, guys, we're going to probably make the show a little bit shorter, even though we're only covering 2 decks. We didn't get a whole lot of emails. It's okay. We're just going to keep the show tight so that I can go back to sleep and hopefully kick this cold.
We'll still be giving you our all, though, so don't worry. We're
no doubt. The fact that we're doing this show this week is a statement in and of itself. Let me tell you. All right. This week, though, we're going to be discussing 2 c-thun decks and maybe some substitutions you can make if you want to play them, and kind of our opinions on how they were performing on the ladder and what ranks. And then a few extra locations for you to go check out in our news section for the deck list. It looks like show notes say DreamHack. I meant to say the North American preliminaries. So the prelims this weekend start officially today. As we're recording on Friday, there's a Tavern Hero tournament to narrow down the Tavern Heroes to 22 or 32 members before the prelims start. And the only reason we mention this is not to cover the pro scene, as we've stated before, but just to make you aware that these big tournaments are always really great for lower tier players and or players that are not great at deck building, because you are able to see these new decks that are kind of coming out into a tournament scene.
Yeah. You basically look at all the pros decks and be like, wow, these are new cards that they're playing, that they're trying out. You kind of got to take it with a grain of salt because, like we've said before, the tournament meta is different than the ladder meta. It's not
right.
like you can take a deck that worked well there and just put it on the ladder and it'll perform the same. But it definitely causes decks to be played more because people do that. They go to the pro scene, they paste and copy their deck, and then they play it on ladder. So it does affect the meta.
Yes, indeed it does. So without further ado, let's get into the discount decks of the week. And Eve's going to kick us off with the c-thun Druid.
What a contraption!
Isn't she scrumptious? She's my revolutionary, non-pollutionary mechanical wonder.
All right, Eve, kick us off.
So basically the idea of this deck and the c-thun Warrior deck is that because you're given c-thun as a free legendary, it's going to be the easiest kind of deck to make. And a lot of the c-thun synergistic cards are also commons. So It's going to be a lot easier to make these decks to start out with if you're just getting back into the game or if you have a very small card pool. But we're not going to say this is an awesome deck. It's going to take you to Legend. We're just saying these decks can work well depending on your Hearthstone goals. If you're just trying to get to 20 and get your card back, or you're trying to get those quests of the day done so you can get your gold, working towards getting more cards, getting better cards, which gets you better decks. This would be something that can work at the lower levels. You're probably not going to take it past 17, 16 is my guess. So basically what I did was I went on my husband's account, which has very few cards. I was able to do the 2 different quests that they give you. They give you the 5 packs of old gods, and then you do the second round of quests and they give you another 5. So he has those, but he didn't pay anything.
So he just has the 10 old gods packs, basically.
Yeah, and then every time I get 100 gold on his account, I buy more old gods packs, and then play the brawl on his account and get some free basic packs and things like that. But he hasn't put any money into it at all, so he has a very small card pool. You probably have better cards than he does.
Yeah, if you're listening to a podcast, the odds are in your favor.
Yes. You could sub in better cards than this, but this got me to rank 17. I was able to finish all of his quests and get some gold and get up to rank 17. So we'll start this off. We got 2 Innervate, which is your bread and butter of the Druid. 1 Living Roots. You can also put in 2. 2 Wild Growth. 1 Wrath. 1 Acidic Swamp Ooze, because for me the meta was very high.
So many weapons in the meta everywhere.
Weapons. Yes. Aggro Shaman. You love to get rid of their Doom Hammer. The Warrior, Paladin, Hunter, all these different decks have weapons in them you want to destroy with the Acidic Swamp Ooze, so it's a good one to put in there. If you have Harrison, that's a good one to put in.
Yeah.
But Acidic Swamp Ooze is cheap, so that's good. 2 Beckoner of Evil, 1 Twilight Geomancer, 1 Addled Grizzly, and I know this card is one of those ones where people are like, would you put that in or not? But he doesn't have a lot of cards.
Wow, you just need like a 3-drop that's sticky. So
yeah. 2 Harvest Golem, 2 Shattered Sun Cleric, 2 Swipe for your board clear, 2 Chillywind Yeti, 1 Keeper of the Grove, 2 Claxy Amber Weaver, 2 Druid of the Claw, 2 Dark Arakoa. He actually managed to pull a Doom Caller, so I put that one in there, 2 Ironbark Protector, and 1 Cthulhu. So basically, the idea when it comes to this deck is, out of the card pool that he's got, I just wanted to put in decent, solid minions for every turn. And then the way Druid works is you gain tempo. You're able to put these things out, the bigger ones out, faster because you have Innervate, because you have Wild Growth. And you just want to get to your Cthulhu.
interesting.
You want to put down a lot of taunt to save yourself to get to Cthulhu, and you want to put down a decent amount of things to buff your Cthulhu. So
sure. And I put in the deck list that AKA Wonder, who is I believe he's from Spain, and he got top 8 with his deck list. We're featuring both his deck list for Cthulhu Warrior and Druid in the show notes for links if you want to see how the version that Eve kind of started with, kind of the skeleton plus the collection she was given, and then you can kind of see that plus the range of what people are actually looking to create with AKA Wonder's deck list with basically a full collection. So those are good pieces to look into. The thing about Cthulhu Druid, along with any Druid, is they always struggle with card draw. So card draw is pretty much why any Druid you go up against is going to be running at least 1 copy of Nourish and at least 1 to 2 Wraths, because they're going to try to get that card draw as soon as they can. And the other things
did some work, definitely.
The other things I noticed about Eve's deck list was that her husband probably doesn't have the full adventure for League of Explorers. So if you have League of Explorers, you're going to actually have a far easier time building this deck because you can put in Bran, and Bran with all of the buffs for Cthulhu synergize very well, as well as the Eclaxy Amber Weaver, which is a rare. The Disciples of Cthulhu are something you're going to want to have, but again, if you're only in 10 packs in and you don't get a Disciple of Cthulhu, it's kind of hard to play them. So I agree with Eve. Like, this list looks pretty good. I think the only two cards that I would try to find some other alternative would be the Geomancer and the Grizzly. You can probably put in 2 Twilight Elders or 2 Disciples of Cthulhu there.
Honestly, at the lower ranks, the fact that you give your Cthulhu taunt seemed like such a horrible thing, like so useless. But a lot of the times I found that Cthulhu was not the game ender. Like, I put him out and I got my opponent low or cleared his board, but it wasn't the end. Yeah. And if he has taunt and he's huge, then he might save you until the next turn where you can use Cthulhu to finish them off.
I do think that giving Cthulhu taunt is by far a underrated ability. However, the ability to give Cthulhu taunt later at a very fast-paced meta right now is what the Twilight Geomancer is not being played for. It's that 1/4 taunt tempo loss that you're getting, whereas the Disciple of Cthulhu, especially if you have 6 mana to play with or a brand's already stuck on the board, you can hit something for 4 damage with a Bran and buff Cthulhu by +4/+4 with Bran. It's insane. And then other times it's just a 2/1 that you can deal 2 damage with is really, really versatile. It feels like a Druid card almost, but everybody gets access to.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you could say some things as your card pool gets bigger,
right?
Things to put in instead of some weak cards in this deck.
Yeah. So
definitely
there's
that would be a good one.
The Harvest Golems I really like. I've been talking with a few friends in the Discord actually about a really strange Druid list. It's like token plus N'Zoth that our friend Shockmaster has been working through iterations in deck, and he's known for being quite anti-meta and crazy with some of his picks. So he's got like Hogger Doom of Elwyn in there just for kicks and giggles, and he's doing pretty well with it, I guess. But one of the key things that I've been noticing is people playing either 2 Mounted Raptors with Druid or 2 of the Harvest Golems, because they're both sticky, they both accomplish the same thing. The big difference is you get a consistent 2/1 out of the Harvest Golem, and the only has 2 attack, but the the Mounted Raptor has the ability to trade up with larger drops with 3 health, but also has the drawback that it dies to like a Loot Hoarder. And then the other bonus is you might even get a 1/3 out of it, like a Mana Worm or a Tunnel Trog or something, just that gets lots more stats. So
it's a little bit of a random.
Those are some cards that you can stick in your 3-drop slot to continue to help. I think Eve's best pick for this deck list, honestly, was going back to vanilla Druid, like putting in the acidic Swamp Ooze because you don't want to see those weapons. You put in the Shattered Sun Clerics because they give you the ability to trade up. Innervating a Yeti is always what Druid has been known for. The swipes are your only form of board clear. I would even say if you have a big game hunter, that's not an entirely terrible decision to make.
Yeah, and if you have Black Knight,
and
that's
Mulch,
a good one to put
actually.
in.
Mulch is a card that I've seen in a couple people's lists. Is a 3-mana destroy a minion, add a random minion to your opponent's hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a weird card. It's not great, but it's the only hard removal that you have besides Naturalize.
Basically, the best way that this deck works is you stay ahead of your opponent. With your Innervate and with your Wild Growth, you always want to be able to trade up because you're putting the heavier things out faster than them, and you stay one step ahead. If you get behind, then it suffers because Wrath is... or swipe. Swipe and Wrath are your only removal.
Right. I think the only other cards that you're going to look to upgrade your deck list eventually is the Azure Drakes. I don't know how long this card has been good, but it's been long enough that I've been able to get both of them in golden. So these cards are the multi-utility for every deck list that you probably want to get. Twin Emperors
card draw and makes your spells do more damage. So yeah.
And Brand plus Twin Emperor on turn 10 is the play, man, to make. Yes. Let me tell you.
If
3,
you have
4,
Twin
6 taunts.
Definitely put them in this deck. That's like an auto include if you have the Emperors.
And going back to the vanilla druid, throwing in a rag, pretty good. So I think that wraps up what I wanted to say about Cthulhu Druid. Eve, do you have any other tips and tricks on Mulligan or like what to do in planning for the end game, for your win condition?
It really depends on what your matchup is. I just tried really to mulligan hard for like either Innervate or Wild Growth in your opening hand. Because you just want to get on getting your tempo up immediately, especially against other aggro decks.
I know that when I play Cthulhu, I always try to do whatever I can to get the cards to get Cthulhu to 10 attack as soon as possible. Because then you can snowball whatever deck you're doing. You either get, if you're playing Priest, you get the heal for 10. If you're playing Warrior, which we'll go into in a minute, you'll get the armor for 10. If you're playing Druid, you get the 4-10 as opposed to a 4-5 in the Claxi Amberweaver. So that's one thing that I'm always looking to do, because you don't want to innervate out a Claxi Amberweaver necessarily. It's not a bad play, but, you know.
And the Emperors, you want 2 of them.
You know, something I saw yesterday on Ladder, Eve, might surprise you, but I saw somebody playing 1 or 2 copies of Defender of Argus in their Druid, because then they can play the Claxi Amberweaver and Defender and get a 4-10 taunt.
Or what is the other one?
Or 5-11 taunt. Sun Fury Protector for 2 mana.
Sun Fury Protector. Yeah. I definitely thought about that because Claxi Amberweaver is the best with a taunt. It's got 10 health if it comes out with its buff, right? So that's the best way to use it.
Yeah. I think this deck is pretty strong. I think it's the best of all of the Cthulhu lists that you can play if you scale it to how many cards you can put into it. Rarity wise, I feel like Cthulhu's the strongest with that deck. And then we can talk through Warrior. So you could argue the deck list that we have here is not ideal because it is built for tournament play. But I, regardless, took it to the ladder because Cthulhu decks I don't think are that powerful, but they are very fun to play when they go right. So let's break down the deck list. Eve, do you have the deck list in front of you perchance?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm gonna have you read off the cards because my voice is getting pretty taxed right now. But as she's pulling that deck list up, just the general win conditions of the deck list is actually more often going to attrition and getting to the point where you're starving your opponents out of resources, so that when you play Cthulhu, that at worst he dies, and at best he can smash your opponent in the face, right? But the goal of the deck is to play around any hard removal that involves transforming Cthulhu. So hexes and polymorphs really screw you up in this deck. And even Entombs and Mind Control mess me up with this deck quite a bit if you're in that Priest matchup. Because you run the Doom Collar, which gives your Cthulhu the +2/+2 and shuffles it into your deck when it dies. So ideally you want to play Doom Collar after you've played Cthulhu. So Eve, you got that deck list?
There we go. Hearthbone is just being really slow for me.
Yeah, they've been slow
Blood to
this morning.
Ichor. I love that card.
Okay, so let's run through the deck list.
So this is the one with, you've got a couple epics in here.
Yeah, we'll break down how to substitute stuff out later.
So 1 Blood to Ichor, 2 Execute, 2 Shield Slam, 2 Fiery War Axe, that's your bread and butter, 1 Slam, 2 Ravaging Ghoul, 2 Shield Block, 2 Brawl, 2 Ancient Shield Bearer, 1 Gore Howl, 1 Beckoner of Evil, 2 Acolyte of Pain, 1 Bran Bronzebeard, 2 Disciple of c-thun, 1 c-thun's Chosen, 1 Elise Starseeker, 1 Justicar Trueheart, 1 Sylvanas Windrunner, 1 Twin Emperor Veclor, 1 Doomcaller, and 1 c-thun.
So I didn't have a whole lot of success with this deck. I feel like if you're running it, it's more or less you're kind of banking on the early game. You really got to get that Beckoner. You really got to get that Fiery War Axe and or a Disciple of c-thun as soon as you can. Because there's so many faster decks out there and you only have a few comeback mechanics. So as you heard Eve listing it off, it's kind of like you have to have a fair amount of Old Gods cards that are rare, and then you have one that is a legendary in this list. And you also need to run a Bran and Elise from League of Explorers.
Okay, so if you play a lot of Warrior, you're going to have Shield Slam and Brawl.
Right.
Because those are really important cards for Warriors to have.
Right.
Like, Brawl is huge.
Yeah.
For Warriors is the only way they can really get rid of
If
everything.
you're playing any control-oriented warrior, you have to run 2 brawls now. It's just you don't even play 1 anymore. It's just not enough. You need to get that consistency when you're running up against tempo and aggro lists. That's your only comeback mechanic. The Ancient Shield Bearers are kind of...
I would say is not like absolutely... You don't absolutely have to have it, but it definitely is a very strong warrior card.
I found Gorehowl to be actually pretty high on the MVP list because it sticks around for so long, and you're able to equip it before you can get your Golden Monkey going. So that's really what happens when you're getting those attrition battles. So I would say if you're erring on the side of should I craft, Twin Emperor or should I craft a Gorehowl and some other cards, I would actually opt for Gorehowl if you're going to play Warrior, because Gorehowl is very good if you just... The nice thing about it is you only need 1 in any situation. So if you open more than 1 Gorehowl, you're not going to need the second one. Another legendary card, if you happen to open it, is Malkarok. Malkarok could substitute out for Gorehowl, basically giving you a weapon and a body for 7 mana. But let's get into the legendaries. So Twin Emperor, Sylvanas, Justicar, right? Those are your bread and butter because everybody gets c-thun, and if you have League of Explorers and you've played through it, you'll get Elise and Bran. So those are the only legendaries left. If you play Warrior, like Eve said, you're going to have Brawls, you're going to have Shield Slams, and you're going to look to be getting at least 1 Gorehowl. Twin Emperors, I feel, is in the deck because you run Bran. You want a Battle Cry on turn 10. If you have both, you get the 3/4/6 taunts for 10 mana and a 2/4 with buffing your Battle Cries. The Sylvanas is the best thing for using it against other controls, and the Justicar is how you can continue to survive attrition battles. So the short end of the stick is this deck isn't very good unless you have all of those tools, ideally like the c-thun Druid. But again, like Eve was saying earlier, you guys are going to be able to do very suboptimal but still very powerful before you hit rank maybe 15. I think you can do pretty well with this deck if you have something else. A card that I have been recently really digging lately is called the Sunwalker. It's a 6 mana 4/5 taunt Divine Shield. That card's really good to sub in and out for legendary cards like Twin Emperor or taunt cards. It's really good. So I would say if you have those, they're just a rare. You can run those. If you're looking for kind of like a burst damage thing like Leroy, you can even replace Leroy's with like Argent Commanders, which is the 4/2 6 mana charge Divine Shield. And that card's pretty good too. But Justicar and Justicar fills that very specific void for this deck. And if you find yourself playing a lot of Warrior, find yourself playing a lot of Priest, especially those two decks utilize Justicar to the T. So I would say if you're gonna get Justicar, you play those two, and even Control Paladins using them now, I would say.
Well, I think honestly with Ancient Shieldbearer, if you manage to have Bran plus Ancient Shieldbearer, then you probably don't need Justicar Trueheart.
Well, I would understand that in the venue of like somebody that is looking to substitute cards, right? But
Yeah.
I think getting 4 armor a turn is not to be underestimated. Like, that's for 2 mana is pretty insane.
I just think the basic problem with this one is that the idea of the deck is kind of all over the place. It isn't really refined down to sort of a single idea. It has kind of a lot of different things going on with it.
The idea for the deck is really to play like Control Warrior, but you're sacrificing your end game to be totally banking on c-thun to get at least a board clear and a good chunk of damage. And then you're also hoping to get through that attrition battle with your at least Starseeker. So that's why I feel like if you're looking to make any of these legendaries for the deck, that you have to craft Justicar's the one. Sylvanas, probably better to craft for all deck types, and there's a good chance that a lot of you will have her already. But if not, I would say you can replace her and the Twin Emperor with like 2 Sunwalkers and be totally fine. Other than that, I can't really think of anything that Justicar does for this deck that is substitutable for the game plan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my thoughts after playing it. I didn't really like playing this deck. I felt like the Control Warrior that I brought to a tournament that I played last week was just much stronger. In fact, I played the mirror match, and I decisively beat him when I was playing Control Warrior versus Control c-thun Warrior. It was much easier for me to deal with because I had those deck slots that were utilizing Disciple of c-thun, c-thun's Chosen. I was actually filling those voids with, you know, stronger cards like Grommash Hellscream and Ravaging Ghouls to kind of clear the board. Oh no, they run Ravaging Ghouls for this one too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I gotta say, I was right about that card.
That card's really good, Eve. You're totally right on base with that one. Ravaging Ghoul is absolutely the nuts. Like, that card's awesome.
So, do you think we did it? We kind of covered our 2 budget decks of the week.
Yeah, I think that these 2 decks, probably more than anything, mainly the Druid one, have been probably the best for budgets, to be honest. Because most of the cards you're getting for free. The Dark Echoes are probably the only ones. And it's sad that I was like, okay, we're going to do c-thun Druid, c-thun Warrior like last week. And then we jump in and I play the Warrior a bit this week. And I'm like, man, this just doesn't feel right to me. It has too many legendaries, has too many epic cards. And on top of that, it's just, it doesn't feel that gratifying when you win, you know? It's really tough to pull off that c-thun play that you're actually going to win with. But,
yeah, I think out of all the different classes, I think Druid kind of made the best c-thun deck.
Right. All right, well, let's go into some news. All right, so we had a semi-repeat brawl, Unite against Mechazod, where you'd play with another player to defeat the floating gnome of death. But
yeah, I don't think there were any new cards. Like, I think
yeah,
the
it
decks
wasn't that
were the
exciting.
same. I mean, it was still kind of like when I went in, I was like, is my opponent / ally going to be on the ball here? Are we going to work together? Are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Because the last time this came out, there were a certain amount of people that were deliberately messing with things just to tick people off. But
Yeah.
I was able to win 3 matches pretty easily. I think people kind of
Nice.
got it and they figured out the strategy. Heal each other, stick together, buff each other's minions, work together, and
Draw
it
cards.
wasn't that hard.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all we really need to say. It is a repeat brawl. We usually go into more depth when they're newer. So let's move on. Spring preliminaries is, like we said, is today through Sunday for North America. So you can check out hearthpwn.com. They have a lot of featured deck lists, and then when the top people finish, they'll feature the top 8 deck lists, and they'll show you what they played. Great opportunity to watch more Hearthstone and to learn from the pros. There's a really cool thing that just went live last night that with the hype releasing around Overwatch, they're giving everybody's battle tag the opportunity to be changed. Whereas previously, you could only change it once, right?
Yeah. So, and here's another thing that I immediately thought of was, people just kind of making a battle tag, not really thinking much about it, and then wanting to become like a professional Hearthstone player or, any other kind of esport, and then going, okay, so when the caster calls out my name,
what do I want him to
is
say?
this going to be like my brand, is it going to sound ridiculous?
You don't want to be known as
silly
just hair follicle HS.
Yeah. Is
Something
everyone going to
silly.
be asking me, what does that mean every single time? So if you do want to be a professional esports player, this is your chance to really put some thought into what your name's going to be.
Right.
And yeah, thank you, Blizzard, for letting us change it.
So very cool. I don't know if Eve or Andrew, do you plan on changing it all? Okay.
No.
I don't know
I'm
what
happy
Andrew.
with mine. Mine is not something silly and ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think Andrew's is that weird either. So I think Andrew will probably just keep it. But I was happy about this because I changed mine to Not Rob a little while ago after being known as Twick forever, and I'm pretty stoked that I don't just use that one thing up. So that basically just means I have a freebie that I can change my battle tag in the future if I want to. That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's all we have for the news, guys. The only other thing I would say is just check out Overwatch. It's coming out soon. It's really fun. Let's get into some emails.
You require my assistance?
All right, Eve, who we got?
All right, we got a question from Creepy.
Yeah, he
What
sent this to me in
is
the
the-
Discord.
Okay. What is the impact for Arena since Blizzard has decided that it will remain as a wild format? So, one of the biggest impacts is that since it's going to be wild, the card pool is just going to continually get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that means there's going to be a disparity between the best decks and the worst decks. When you had a smaller card pool, it was like, I don't know, like if you can imagine, there's not that big of a difference between the best deck that you can make and the worst deck that you can make because you're all using the same kind of cards.
Mhm.
But as the card pool gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, you could have a deck that's made out of just complete crap. You can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And you're up against people in Arena who just have all the best cards in the game.
Yeah.
So,
But Arena is so much different, right? Because they are giving you the 50% increased offering. That sometimes changes from expansion to expansion. That you're going to see
Right.
bonus of that set, the most recent one, and then the
that's
second half is
helpful.
you're only seeing
but-
3 cards at a time. So the card pool from which they're pulling is more or less a random number generator rather than a power level thing. So I think you can slowly see
luck.
the power level going up, but it's not really a consistent increase. It's like how many of the 4 mana cards are up and how many of the 3 mana cards are up in power overall, and what's the percentage look like for me to get them.
But there's going to be like over time, there's going to be a difference between the best 4 mana card and the worst 4 mana card.
Right.
And the problem is, I mean, the way that they've explained it is that the people that you play against are people with the same win-loss ratio as you in that
Right.
arena.
Right.
So if you lose a game and then win a game, you are matched up against people who have lost a game and won a game.
Yep.
And they could have an amazing deck and you could have a total crap deck, but because you both have won and lost a game, you'd be matched up against each other.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that going forward, they look at this and they kind of make more tools for
Yeah.
arena players to kind of
I just
overall,
don't know
even
what
out
you
the
would do
box,
in that scenario, you
I
know?
don't know either. I don't know. I just hope they talk about it and they think about it, and
Yeah.
it's something
I
somebody's
mean,
working on.
it is a key
because-
feature of their game, and they've said that they're not ignoring it. They're gonna address it, and they're gonna try to make it a great experience. I hope it's soon rather than later.
Yes. There are some times when I go in and every single card that I have to choose is not a good choice. Like every 3 cards that they give for me to choose from is like, I don't want any of those.
Right.
And then the next 3 pop up and I'm like, and all those are crap too. And the next 3 pop up and it's like, what? Just like, and then you go up against somebody who's got like 6 fireballs in their deck.
Or like
And
3
so
board
rage quit.
clears and just giant minions that they've been able to survive forever. So
Yeah.
it happens. And the lucky thing about Arena is it's kind of like one of those things where it's almost a fresh experience every time you get a new deck. So that's one aspect of Arena that I really do like. Sometimes you roll Yahtzee, sometimes you get a full house, you know, and sometimes you get nothing. So it just happens. Just re-roll it and try it again. Well, thank you for your question, Creepy. We really appreciate it. And speaking of Creepy, he is one of our patrons. And we are going to take the time now to thank each one of our patrons.
Do we have a new one this week?
We have one new Patreon supporter.
Kelvin, which just makes me think of Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, very cool.
Jamie S., Kelvin, Crovan B., Ricardo C., John H., Pratap N., Gabriel Z., Garrett S., and Jeffrey W. Thank you very much for supporting the show.
You guys are awesome.
I appreciate that they found value in our show and they decided to give us back value for our value.
We really
If you
appreciate the
cannot
tip.
financially support the show, then please, by word of mouth, if you tell your friends who play Hearthstone that you like the podcast and maybe they should check it out, that's a great way. And also, if you leave us iTunes reviews, then that also increases our visibility when people search for Hearthstone podcasts and things like that.
Especially in
so that makes it
iTunes.
easier.
iTunes is like the big sink for everybody finding stuff. I have noticed that when I check iTunes periodically to see where we're at as far as like rankings are concerned, we kind of drop off. It's harder for people to find us on that front page, but I mean, it's tough when you're not number 1. That's why we ask for our viewers to give us iTunes reviews, because it helps people find us. So that being said, we do have one iTunes review, and we actually found out that we have a Stitcher review this week as well. So let's read the Stitcher review first. Eve?
All right. From Dan J. 5 stars, one of the best podcasts. I've listened to many Hearthstone podcasts trying to find something to listen to on my drive to work. Nearly every Hearthstone podcast I listen to have a couple very flaws.
It's probably just a grammar thing, yeah.
Have a couple flaws, but Velen's Chosen nails these aspects of podcasting that set it above the competition. They don't exclusively cater to whales or to players who are obsessed with the tournament scene. Their advice is surprisingly good at trying to meet players where they are with their collections. When they do deck reviews, they suggest replacement cards and tend to review mostly decks that are not very expensive while still competitive. The hosts stay on topic and are constantly keeping an eye towards the length of the podcast so that it's an easily digestible length with an appropriate amount of banter and no unnecessary filler. They have a consistent recording schedule so that you can expect there will be a new podcast every week, or at the least they'll give you a heads up that there will be no podcast for some amount of time if there's a large event coming up. Overall, top-notch podcast and continuing to get better. Wow.
Wow, that is a stellar and very thorough review, Dan J. Thank you so much. That's great.
Amazing. I just, you know what, when I see that list, it makes me want to continue to make sure we hit all these points.
Yeah,
Like
and
when I
it's
read
so
them, I was like,
great.
yeah, let's keep doing that. Let's keep making sure that all these things are things that we do.
And you know, it's really gratifying when somebody regurgitates a review and hits on the main points that is like within your mission statement, you know? Like he's basically, number 2, staying on topic, keeping an eye towards the length of the podcast, and keeping it digestible with with appropriate banter but no unnecessary filler. Like that is to a T like what we try to do on every show, and it's great that you appreciate that, because that's something we really strive hard for. So
Something that's very important to Rob.
yeah.
Like I like the banter. I would probably wander off topic quite a bit, but Rob is very show notes, topics.
Stay to it, man. Stay to it.
Stay on target.
All right, and then we have an
and
iTunes
then, yeah.
review.
iTunes review from. Okay, so I was reading this a couple of times because I was trying to figure out how to pronounce this, and I think I figured it out.
Dizzy
This
Shay
is Shay
J?
J. This is Shay J.
Ah, I
This
see.
is Shay J from USA. It says that intro music though, very
Oh.
nice. I
Yeah.
love it too. Every time I hear it, I'm so happy.
Yep. And you can segue that right into thanking Watchman HS for making that amazing intro and outro for us the last couple weeks. It's been phenomenal, and he's still working on bumpers. Hopefully, I'm gonna be hard pressed to get rid of my Willy Wonka discount sound, but we'll see.
We're just so happy with the intro and the outro that I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what he comes up with. I know
trust
it's gonna
him.
be amazing.
I definitely trust him. All right, so how can you get involved with the show? Well, guys, please jump over to Discord. It's kind of like a chat room, I guess you could say, but it's more or less oriented towards also having voice. So you can kind of have like a chat room for voice and or typing. It's a place for people to share deck lists on the fly. A lot of people in our community have been really adamant and enjoying sharing decks and talking stuff in the chat. So go hang out over there. If that's not your cup of tea, you can hang out with us on Twitter. You can play Hearthstone with us. You can request one of us to give you a collection kind of coach through if you're still looking to say, hey, what should I craft? What should I dust, etc. And then there's a Facebook group called the NHS. So facebook.com/group/the N THEINNHS to go check out some more people that are doing kind of the same thing on a Facebook venue. If you want to send us an email or send me a DM on Twitter on Discord, we're most likely featured on the show. We've been kind of thin the last couple weeks, but I think it's because everybody's so interested in having so much fun with the new expansion. So it's totally fine. Totally fine. Go hang out and enjoy it. So you can send us an email at velenschosenpodcast.com. And we have hit a really big milestone in our Patreon that we would love to release to you this week. So Eve, I'm going to give you the air for this one.
Well, I don't know. You spent so much time on it, Rob, and you did such a good job. I think that you should be the one to reveal
All
it.
right,
It's
all
like,
right.
It's like your baby.
All right. So as we stated, between $50 and $60, we would release a segment of our website where you guys can buy merch. So we have t-shirts.
We have
t-shirts. And I have mine in the mail. It's already set up. There's seasonal items, so everything in the shop there, just standard t-shirts will stick around. But we even have a tote bag in there. We have V-necks. We have Tri-Blend. So special thanks to Spreadshirt for even just having that website as a venue for us to kind of create stuff. They're not the cheapest shirts, but they are really easy to make and really easy to set up, and that's why we went with Spreadshirt. So we do get a very small cut of all of the shirts based off of the logo and based off of like a small cut. But the more we sell and the more Spreadshirt prints, the more of the cut that we actually get. So if you'd rather support the show by buying a shirt instead of doing Patreon, that's great. So go buy a shirt, and it's got the new brand on it. So very cool.
I think they look really good.
Yeah, I already ordered one, so I'm really
I'd like
pumped to
see
get it.
you like on the next podcast or the one after that wearing it
Oh,
in the video.
yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll
Show
get that.
Our watchers what
Indeed.
it looks like in the flesh.
Indeed. So you can go to patreon.com and support us to get our next goal. There's also some really cool stuff that Mr. Jamie S., our official partner on Patreon, has done. Being our top tier patron supporter, he's going to get a custom shirt from Eve. They're working through some of the details for that once the payment clears. And then he will also get a shirt from the merch store of his choosing. So very cool stuff. That being said,
if you have an idea of what you would like to get the Valen's Chosen logo on, if there's something else you think would be neat that you would pay money for, send us an email. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. So thanks again to Watchmen for making all of our amazing sounds for our show. And Eve, where can the lovely people at home find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Finnavar, FHINNOVARR, and on Twitch as Eve Martin. If you want my BattleNet, then send me a DM. Is it called a DM?
Yeah, direct message DM.
DM. And then if you are not an egg, then I will consider it. I got to rank 10.
Ooh, hype. I think I maxed out at 14 because I tanked a bunch of ranks when I was playing the c-thun warrior. So
I forgot how straight up, okay, language warning, how straight up balls to the wall you have to be in order to play aggro shaman.
Yep.
It's a little scary. I think you have to be like even more crazy kamikaze than you had to be before.
Right.
Old Gods came out, but if you are piloting aggro shaman, you really do have to be super aggressive, like scary. Ignore all the stuff they have and just trust that you will have that burst to get you there when the time comes. And it got me to rank 10, so that's what I'm playing right now.
All right, you can find Andrew at Andrew is Living on Twitter. You can find him on Twitch at the same tag. And if you want to check out his YouTube videos at Banaka Freak, and then his battle tag is Andrew is Live number 1973. You can find me at Twitter, not Rob, and you can find my other podcast called The Omnic Lab that features a little game that's coming out next week called Overwatch. And we like to do basics and strategy. So it's it for me and Eve this week.
My assistance?
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Oh, it gets me every time.
I foresaw this.
I just like forget it's coming, and then I'm like, oh yeah.
Did I miss it?
And that's a wrap.